If safety is the most important issue in life, let's get the speed limit down to 45 and keep the ships in the harbor. So writes Edwin Friedman in his landmark book, A Failure of Nerve. America, he said, is stuck in imaginative gridlock. We are a land consumed by anxiety, fear, and an obsession with safety. As a result, we are also a civilization in regression. Great institutions lay in disrepair. We seem to produce no great men and no great works. Once illustrious denominations collapse with empty pews and elderly congregants. Societal trust is at an all-time low. A sense of national greatness has been replaced with self-loathing and hatred of our forefathers. Instead of funding great exploits like the space race and Apollo missions, we now fund civil rights welfare programs. Largely, this is because we lack the kind of bold, masculine leadership that inspires society's builders, entrepreneurs, statesmen, and artists to unleash their most creative potential. Instead of pouring our best strength into our best and most productive people, we allow the fussers and malcontents to dominate the discourse and steer organizations. What can get a society like ours unstuck? To answer this question, Friedman draws an interesting parallel between our era of bureaucratic stagnation and the age of exploration, which sparked the Renaissance, and one of the most monumental explosions of human invention, commerce, art, political theory, and theology. It wasn't that people suddenly got more data or increased in learning. Instead, it was because certain men arose, brave men willing to face the unknown, uncharted oceans, bands of bloodthirsty savages, and scores of unknown dangers. Chief among them were the Portuguese, a small country at the outer edge of Europe with little prominence but a tremendous amount of ambition. They were propelled forward by ambitious men and a sense of desperation. Under Prince Henry the Navigator, the Portuguese set sail to find a route around Africa. For a century, they built boats, made new and more accurate maps, and eventually, under Vasco da Gama, reached the Orient. Da Gama's journey took over 2 years, and when he had returned to Lisbon in 1499, he and his men had covered over 27,000 miles on open waters. What is most interesting, though, is that the spirit of adventure sparked a renewal of Western civilization. As Friedman put it, quote, "The qualities of adventurous leadership that enabled Europe to escape its doldrums are exactly the leadership qualities necessary for breaking the imaginative gridlock of our civilization today. The catalyst for those other imaginative breakthroughs was the nerve of the great navigators who led the way. Europe's imaginative capacity was unleashed not by a discovery of learning, but by the discovery of the new world." End quote. In other words, it was the nerve of certain leaders who embraced bold risk, set out into the unknown, and inspired generations of artisans, craftsmen, poets, and politicians to get to work. These same explorers would inspire future generations of explorers, entrepreneurs, and adventure seekers to establish Protestant outposts of Christian civilization in America. In this episode of the King's Hall podcast, we'll continue talking about great tribal leaders and why they're so essential for building Christian boroughs. We'll discuss men like Prince Henry the Navigator, who had the power to transform his generations because of his boldness, clarity of vision, and audacity to see the mission accomplished. We'll also be discussing the principles and characteristics of leadership that we've tried to cultivate here in Ogden. What we need is not merely men who have key insights or analysis, but men who have the nerve to set out on grand adventures. Men who inspire others to pursue greatness and glory. That was always part of our goal with New Christendom Press, by the way. We knew we couldn't fix everything about our dilapidated culture, but we also believed and still believe that a few brave men doing quality work can inspire others to start rebuilding in their own time, place, and way. In the end, men do not follow titles, they follow courage. Finally, in today's episode, we'll discuss more practical details about our Leadership Guild, which is an apparatus designed to train future community and church leaders to engage in the work of Christendom. Great civilizations are built by many hands, but directed by great leaders. We'll talk about how to create men with nerve who lead well in the context of a local borough. The King's Hall podcast exists to make self-ruled men who rule well and win the world.
Well, welcome to this episode of the King's Hall podcast, joined today by John Travolta from the 1950s.
Hey. Yeah, thanks. Hey, thanks for giving me that.
Do you have a cigarette rolled up in these sleeves?
I smoked them all.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm out.
Just as long as they're filterless.
Oh, filterless, chain smoked, ripping heaters. All day, every day. Yeah.
We are Brutal American maxing today.
Yeah, Brutal American shirt.
Brutal American.
Just
tin,
some Brutal American mouse pad. Brutal American pens.
This is like watching E.T. with all the ad placements.
Yeah. Reese's Pieces. Alien fresh.
Brian, welcome to the show, first of all.
It's so good to be here, Eric. Welcome to yourself.
Yes, it's good to be here. It's good to be seen.
Yeah.
It's very important.
If you aren't listening on, or if you're just listening on the podcast, just real quick, head over to our YouTube channel, The King's Hall. Give us a subscribe, hit that notification bell, all the stuff they always tell you to do. And notice the glory of our set. We've got dead animals.
We've got it all.
We've got it all. We've got it all.
We've got it all. One thing I do note, we're in like the third part of what was supposed to be like one episode.
True.
On leadership. And I noticed that Martina McBride, our producer, has actually installed a clock.
Yeah, he has.
Which I will ignore.
Yeah. He was so real for that.
It's weird because only we can see it, not him. It's almost like he thinks we need that.
It's counting really fast. Like there's no way that we've already gone this long.
Yeah. Oh, it's insane.
It's only been about 30 seconds.
It's absolutely insane.
Crazy.
Brian, one thing I do want to let people know about is our Patreon show.
Yeah.
After Hours. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what to expect there.
After Hours is it's the boys being the boys. We get together. We talk about whatever we want. Oftentimes we do expand on something from the episode, get a little more granular and practical on maybe one of the points. But we've also been known to discuss mean tweets, to see what the gays and the feminists are up to, and just kind of make fun of them a little bit, that kind of thing. You know, it's a place where we're just among friends.
We're among friends.
Yeah. And so we can stop being as nuanced and winsome as we normally are.
Yes.
And really, really just let our hair down.
Yeah. Speaking of letting your hair down, one of the things that I don't know what that has to do with it.
His transitions are unreal. His transitions are unreal.
They're unreal.
They're unreal.
We had kind of a post this week with Lila Rose, and she had another lady on there talking about how spicy and attractive their
celibate priests
are.
They were like, look at this priest. He's celibate. and then they're like, and my husband's so self-controlled. And I'm like, yeah, and you're not.
Yeah, what?
Where is he? He needs to not just be self-controlled, but also control his wife a little bit more.
That's right.
Because she needs to stop wilding on the TL.
Yeah. So Wary's Law confirmed.
We'll talk
more about this.
Undefeated.
Yeah. Speaking of undefeated, us in this show. Another great transition. One of the things I think that's interesting as we're talking about leadership, I was fascinated reading Friedman's book, which a lot of people have talked about, Failure of Nerve. But one of the things I really like about this is the concept of the age of exploration, not learning, but the age of exploration that sparked civilizational renewal.
Yeah.
I think certain guys like Elon Musk get this. But why do you think that's such an important feature, that it was a certain kind of leader? A lot of the guys were imperfect.
Yeah.
Da Gama did not read, Jim Collins books.
He didn't?
No. He did not read them. And some of the things he did, like with his men, you were like, that is not a good leadership principle.
Yeah.
But they had a will to get things done.
Yeah, that's what it came down to. They had a goal, they were courageous, and they were willing to, they were like Michael Scott. Okay, hear me out. When Michael Scott said, I will start paper company after paper company after paper company. Like Vasco da Gama, he would set out knowing that half of their ships would not return and half the men would die. And that he very well might be one of those people that died. There's ship worms, their ships are getting eaten out from under them. There's storms. They have no idea where they're going. There's natives or populations they're going to run into that literally just want to kill them. They might run out of fresh water. The food is all maggot ridden. You get scurvy going on. I don't even think they knew what caused scurvy fully yet. And he was like, yeah, that sounds like, sign me up. Let's go.
And they did it.
And they did it.
And that's the amazing thing. It inspired artists.
Yeah.
And you have the Renaissance, not all good, but there's a lot of amazing things that came from it. You have the Protestant Reformation. It was sort of this idea that Friedman draws on, that if you shattered one gridlocked imagination somewhere, it would produce it in other areas. And I would tie it, as you did in the cold open, kind of to the project of New Christendom, where we're saying, like, we're not trying to do everything.
No.
We're just trying to be bold in the sphere that God's given us, and inspire other men. I guess talk about a little bit how we've seen that happen in real time. Other guys who have kind of stepped up and said, we're not going to be pastors with podcasts, but we're going to do other good work.
Yeah, and that's important to note, that the goal isn't to do something and say, now we just want everybody to do exactly the same things that we're doing. Because as the joke runs, like, we have enough Reformed podcasts. We have enough, probably.
We should start another one.
You know what we should do? One more. Maybe one more will get us there.
This one will be different, though. It'll be about eschatology.
It was Bendelwary. He posted, he retweeted someone. I can't remember who they were, and I'm not trying to dunk on them necessarily. But it was like a picture of three guys, and they're like, breaking news. We're starting a podcast, and me and my friends, we're going to talk about theology and culture. And Ben was like, this has never been done before. That's insane. Okay, so we're not trying to necessarily say everybody do what we do, but it is funny that what happens as we were just doing what was in front of us. Like, you know, this is what God put in front of us to do. We were at first in just pastoring a church, started making media content to help sort of address cultural issues, areas of reformation that legitimately I just saw we needed in our church. It wasn't like, hey, let's try to reach a bunch of other people. We just published this little podcast as a convenient way that busy moms and dads could listen to something and not have to make it to a 7:30 Sunday school hour, which is not always doable for everybody. But they can while they're mowing their lawn.
Because you guys were doing like what was the pastor?
It was like the Sunday school podcast and
Stump the Pastors.
Stump the Pastors. Yeah, we did a couple of these, and they were just internal.
Well, and even when I started, we were actually we were still in blogging.
Yep.
And I would write these 3,000 word essays.
Yep.
And I had a lot of guys in the church at the time who just said, "Hey, I'm a sheriff's deputy. I can't read while I'm driving, but I can listen to a podcast."
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just do it in audio form.
Yeah, I'll just do that.
It was really just to meet like a local need, and that not knowing that it would kind of take off and people would say, no, we actually need more of this. Yeah.
And it was fun. And then, Bright Hearth and King's Hall and eventually Iconic Cosmos, Hard Men was early in that too. We started doing these sorts of things, started a publishing house, the school, the church. And as these things grew up, and did actually, they achieved the things we set out in the church first, where they truly did lead to reformation in the church, in our local church, where the right things were confronted, the right idols were knocked down. We started to increasingly see things like how long-housed church culture was. Even ours, where it was like we had never been we'd always been very strongly male pastor only, these sorts of things. But then you look around, you say, yeah, but this women's ministry over here, and like having this children's ministry like this, and the dynamic of marriages and marriage counseling, and hey, this gospel-centered movement is really failing to address the application of the law, and hey, it's really failing to address that application in sexed piety and business, and you start going down the reformation of that small people. And then, that grows and more people come and there are reformed people there in that local context, breaking the imaginative gridlock that all of those various prisons that we've put ourselves in, feminist, long-housed prisons, when you start breaking the walls down just in a local people, what it does is it doesn't replicate. Now all of the church are podcasting and doing pastoral work. That's not how it works. You free up the whole body to be the body, the hand to be the hand, the mouth to be the mouth, the eyes to be the eyes. And so what you see actually is just an explosion, again, first in our little local context, of men and women doing amazing, great work that wouldn't have been done. We weren't seeing these types of things in all sorts of other endeavors, in business, in families, in the culture, and then multiply that out in what we see on the outer, because it starts with us and our church, and then it kind of works its way out. And listen, and you listeners and pastors, and there's lots of leaders and folks who listen to this podcast. We've seen the same thing. Mount Athos Performance is a family-owned fitness brand that gives you the tools you need to cultivate a lifestyle of health and fitness. Bro, you know I'm doing an ad right now, right?
Oh, yeah. No, you're doing great, man. Keep it up.
But can you stop shaking the bottle just for a minute?
Oh, wait. You want me to stop shaking my Mount Athos Performance shaker bottle filled with Mount Athos Performance protein?
Yes, that would be great.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
Well, as I was saying, Mount Athos sources their goat whey from their family-owned farm so they can create a product that's not full of crazy chemicals or additives.
Oh, yeah, dude. You can tell this is the good stuff. I'm drinking this goat so that I can get goated. Oh, yeah.
Well, they have products like protein powder, creatine, supplements for your mind. There should be one for sleep somewhere. Head to athosperform.com and use code NCP20 for 20% off your order today. Great news here at the New Christendom Press warehouse. Lexi Sauve's book, My Beautiful Wife, Wisdom on Her Tongue, it's in stock and shipping. Look at our team go here. Totally not child labor, an elite team of fulfillment experts getting these books out to you. And what that means is that if you order this book, it's gonna be in the mail and to you within like a week or so. Pick up a copy today at newchristendompress.com/wisdom. We're killing it right now. Okay. We're gonna keep on dancing.
It's interesting too. I know BAP talks about this, but how like a longhouse, feminist-driven and feminist-coded society just won't produce great works in general. Mm-hmm. We kind of get the stagnation of a bureaucracy. But then again, Europe had that. It was funny because reading Friedman, he talks about how at that time period before the 1400s and Henry, they talked a lot about the end of the world. And they even had like the Nuremberg Chronicle, where they were essentially saying, here's the chronicle of the world up until this point. And then they left a few pages blank and they said, just whoever comes after us, just fill in what happens before the end of the world.
A few pages.
Because it's all just going to end.
Yeah.
So there was a pessimism, I think, about the age. But then you have Henry, and sort of the story of Portugal that I find interesting is they're at the edge of the peninsula. France and other, your great nation, they're really dominating what's going on in the Central Europe. Mm-hmm. Portugal can't go to their east. Yeah. And so they're like, well, what are we going to do? And they're looking and they're saying there's a stranglehold on trade from the Muslim Empire, which we've covered with the Crusades. Mm-hmm. And so they said, well, we can sail around Africa. Now you got to keep in mind at this point, it took imagination and boldness because there were no maps. Yeah. They didn't know what was there. And even today, people are like, "Oh man, that's so dumb. How did they not know that?" Well, no one had been there.
Yeah, I mean, there's no satellite imagery. It's guys in wooden boats powered by the wind and oars, but
yeah,
you don't want to have to rely on oars to sail 27,000 miles.
So they set sail, and like you said, there's a war of attrition. I mean, you're losing ships. Part of the story I find so interesting is eventually they figure out how to round the Cape of Good Hope, which is ironic naming from the Portuguese because it was literally like where people went to die. Yeah. And they were like, no, it's the Cape of Good Hope. Hope. Yeah. This leaders are dealers in hope, and we're gonna even name things accordingly. But the way they figured it out, somebody said, what if we got down in that region and there's a lot of doldrums and tough winds? Yeah. They said, what if we sailed like 1,000 miles west into the Atlantic Ocean and caught different currents? Maybe then we could round the Cape.
And it's just a guess.
They were guessing.
They don't know if that is true. And if they're wrong, here's the neat part. You just die.
You just die and no one ever finds the bodies.
Yeah, that's it. And they're like, well, hey, are those guys ever going to come back? And all your families of these sailors and all these men, maybe 5-6 years in, they just go, well, I guess they all died.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting because as you think about Henry and what he didn't actually accomplish the mission. Da Gama is 75 plus years later. Mm-hmm. But what he did is he built a city in Lisbon that attracted all the best and brightest cartographers, shipbuilders. They had to innovate and figure out new technology. So they end up developing new kinds of ships that will, get the mission done. But it's interesting. He basically built a pipeline of leaders who across the generations would be able to accomplish the mission. So 1499, you mentioned Da Gama. I just want to ask, why is it so important that we have cultivation of pipelines of this kind of leader?
Yeah, I mean, here's the reality. When you have bureaucratic sludge, just huge, vast layers of bureaucratic sludge, you have to understand that it's not just that kind of culture doesn't create good leaders of the courageous, high intelligence, high creativity, high problem solving, high innovating leaders. It's that it actively suppresses them.
Yeah.
Those types of leaders are actively selected out in huge layers of bureaucracy. I mean, I even saw this recently. Someone posted about the IQ dynamic in leadership, where most managers in large bureaucracies and middle management, not the people at the very, very top, but the vast majority of managers and leaders came in around the 100 to 110 IQ sort of range. So average to slightly above average. And people that were 130 or higher, you're starting to get some standard deviations up the chain. And that's where people who are just particularly gifted by God and they're particularly capable of innovation and creativity and seeing a problem in a whole new way, or crumpling the paper up, throwing it away and saying, that's not even the right problem to think about. We need to think about this thing. Elon Musk is a guy like that. You think of how he's like, oh, the problem isn't with a rocketry, just getting rockets up in space and carrying payloads. We need to get the cost down by 10 times. And the only way to do that is to have the rockets land themselves. And people were like, Elon, that's stupid. It's basically a huge bomb that explodes up into the air. One thing goes wrong, it explodes. How on earth are you going to have it re-enter from these vast speeds? It's a big metal tube that was just full of explosives, basically, and have it land itself. And he was like, I don't know. I think we can do it.
We can figure it out.
And then he did.
That's actually another principle with Friedman, by the way, where he says the great leaders are the ones who, instead of just relying on the same questions that have always been asked, they start asking new questions.
Yeah.
The whole thing with Islam was how do we crush Islam? How do we defeat them in military endeavors? And then Columbus and the Portuguese and others started saying, what if we shut down their economic engine?
Yeah, what if we just went that way and totally bypassed them and then destroyed them economically?
Yeah.
Well, and the middle manager thing, the point was that those higher octane, higher IQ, higher gifting leaders, they didn't fit well in the bureaucracy. One of the big reasons was that they have a hard time communicating to and translating to the vast majority of people in a large scale bureaucracy. So they almost need translators, people in the middle that understand them, aren't intimidated by them, aren't offended by them.
Yeah.
Because usually it's annoying to work with people like this because they're frustrated that you don't see where you're supposed to be going. And so you just have to understand that the bureaucracy, what we have today, it militates against creative, courageous leadership of this sort. So if you want it, you have to actually, first of all, a lot of the time you have to go outside of the existing system, and then you have to make them over here.
Well, what's so interesting about this, I was recently reading in 2 Kings 7 and 8. This is the story of Syria has laid siege to Samaria, and the captain, the king's right-hand guy, the captain, says to Elisha, there's this brutal story of the women are eating their children. The king is just, in distress over it. And the captain says, nothing can be done. And Elisha says, there will come deliverance because this is a light thing for the Lord to deliver. But he said, you'll see it, but you won't get to taste it. And he eventually gets trampled in the gate by the people as they run out. But the interesting thing is there's lepers at the gate on the outside of the camp. Mm-hmm. And they see the victory and they're like, well,
let's go.
I mean, let's just go out there. Like, what do we got to lose?
Yeah.
So, and what's interesting about this is that they were outside the camp. Mm-hmm. And I think in many ways, that's kind of how we started. It was like, well, look, like any camp that is anything has already kicked us out.
Or they wouldn't have us in the first place.
Or they wouldn't have us.
Yeah.
And so we were kind of like, well, what do we have to lose by critiquing the system? We're not part of the regime anyway. And then so you go out, you find the spoil, and you come back to the people and you're like, hey, I found some things. But I think that's why so often these leaders, even Portugal is an example of this, they're the people on the outs.
Yeah.
And the Lord just seems to delight to use the leper who has nothing to lose.
The uncredentialed leper.
Yes.
Someone, like, I think it was literally the Attorney General of Idaho was fussing at me on my Twitter, and he was calling me all sorts of names. And one of the names he was calling me was, "Oh, you're untrained." And I was thinking to myself, I was like, it's not actually true. There's not just one type of training. I did get a Bible degree, a very worthless Bible degree, but I did get one. But that's not the training that I would point to. But the point was, I've seen what your training produces.
Yeah, we've seen the fruit of it.
I respectfully decline your training. And that it's actually difficult to make that conscious decision and say, and I don't mean this in a boasty way, but I think this is worth like thinking through, because this is something I thought through even very early in my life, in my adult life. I had a full tuition scholarship, an academic scholarship to any college in Utah. I had just completed and it was for a 4-year degree, just completed my associate's degree. And I was thinking like, okay, am I going to continue? Am I going to get my bachelor's and then maybe an MDiv? What am I going to do? And at the time here in this church, there was lots of opportunity for leadership, for training, for hands-on work, laboring in the ministry alongside the elders at the time. And I just made the calculation, like I can't do both well right now. And I made the calculation, I think it would be better to just give up the scholarship, to say, I don't want that money, because I don't want to spend 2 more years receiving that kind of training, and then 2 more years after that, or 3 more years after that, receiving even more training, because looking at the fruit it's producing, like, I don't think that fruit is good.
Right.
So it was a huge risk to say, I'm going to opt out. I'm going to go get an unaccredited Bible degree and do a bunch of just hands-on ministry stuff there. And it was much harder. But one of the things that it really did was it proved, at least in my own experience, the value of hands-on, in the thick of it, pastoral training in the context of the local church.
Yep.
That to me was so valuable. I can go read books. I can go, literally in today's day and age, you could go to TNARS. Well, it used to be TNARS. I can't remember what it is now. You could go and get a whole MDiv curriculum and go do it. The elites don't want you to know this.
You can simply do it.
But you can just do things. And with the internet, you can just do things. What you need to recognize, though, and I'm not saying this to say all seminaries are bad, all seminarians are stupid. That's not it at all. I really don't mean that. However, we have to recognize that the vast majority of our institutions have been infiltrated, and the thing they produce is the thing the machine wants them to produce.
Right.
Which are leaders who perpetuate the machine.
Well, and that's one of the hard things, I think, is because I looked at the same system through seminary, and I was a part of it for a while. And I would watch how it worked. You'd recruit young, talented kids from their local church. They would move to another state in Kentucky. They would be a part of seminary. You could kind of see what happened with the academic trajectory, even more so now with, all the woke professors at Southern and stuff like that. You could see what was going on. But even the whole system of like going around, once you get out, you go around to churches, you apply, you just spent like $100,000 on an MDiv, and then you go and they're going to pay you $40,000 a year, maybe to be a full-time pastor at a church that has been a meat grinder for 10 other pastors before you, and it's going to break your family, and it's going to be just a disaster. Mm-hmm. And I looked at that and I was like, that can't be the way.
Yeah.
But most people, I think, even guys who agreed with me, were like, well, yeah, but there just wasn't a way to envision something different.
Yeah.
And so I think now you're kind of getting in that space of saying, well, Christ even did a similar thing with his disciples. One of the chief accusations against them was that these are untrained men.
Yeah, they're unlettered.
Meaning they didn't get they didn't go through our accrediting process.
Yeah.
The Pharisees are like the
They
establishment.
didn't go to the best rabbinical schools.
Correct. So I think that's factored into what we're trying to do now is we're saying like, well, we're certainly not going to train leaders by sending them to your run-of-the-mill seminary.
No.
So then we say, okay, what do we do? And as you mentioned, there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of curriculums. We've had guys actually graduate from seminary, which does not include myself. I'm very, very thankful. Very, very proud of that, I guess. No, I'm just kidding. But because of that, it's like you have syllabi that you can look at. Pastor Sen has been to a couple different seminaries that he uses military funding to go get seminary degrees. Well, I'm bored and I got to do something productive. But all that stuff is out there where you could build it and you could recruit. So we'll kind of jump into some of that. But as we do, I want to talk about leadership principles, I think that have shaped our community.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before with going through the hierarchies and thinking through biblical principle. But maybe principle number one is a good place to start, that ruling well is a gift. So why is this important? I think because there's kind of an assumption, I think, in a lot of circles that like everybody's a leader or everybody has the potential to be a leader.
Yeah.
And it is true, like say for fathers, in some sense, everyone has spheres where they're going to have to exercise some level of leadership. But as Paul says in Romans 12, and this is verses 6-8, that having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, let us use them. Then he goes on to say, the one who leads with zeal.
With zeal. So
it means that there are a select group of people who have this competency.
Yes.
This is sort of in the old world, the old Christendom, it was just understood. Like, yeah, you're going to have aristocracy. You're going to have a class of people who tend to lead and rule. It should be based on qualification and competency. It's not everybody. The other thing that's interesting here in Paul's language, the Greek, leadership is kind of a soft word, I think, that's more palatable today. But the word he uses is to rule.
To rule.
And it means to put before, to set over, or to rule.
Yeah.
So as we kind of start with that, why is that, first of all, important to understand that like it's a gifting? You have to be able to identify people with that gift.
Yeah.
And they have to be, like, certain people are good at ruling.
Yeah, so, man, there's so much there. Again, I think we could do we're capable of doing a whole episode on every one of these.
Yes.
So, but briefly, it is so important to understand that rule is a gift, because one thing that does is it immediately tells you that not everybody should be a leader.
Yeah.
And that you can't just make anybody a leader. Leadership is not just the result of a certain curricular process, that you can just put anybody into this process and it produces a leader. And that's one of the problems of a large-scale credentialing systems, is that they can tend to just take anybody whose money is green. So in seminary, I know there are like pastoral references and you have to get certain things in most seminaries to get in, but they're not very rigorous or vigorous.
No, and you can generally fake them pretty easy.
You can pretty much find someone, because people are not very good at saying no in our day and age.
Well, think about the seminary itself. It's incentivized to take your money and bring you in.
Totally. And think of a pastor who's got a young guy who's kind of a dweeb, and he's like a theology nerd. And that pastor, if you said to him, like backroom, one-on-one, hey, should this guy be a leader? He would say, oh, absolutely not. That kid comes to him and says, hey, so Pastor so-and-so, I want to go get a seminary degree. I'm really interested in Bavinck. And most of the time, and I say this to our shame, but most of the time, the pastors will say, sure, kid, let me write you a letter and get rid of you.
I was going to say, I knew a lot of guys who ended up in seminary because they were the annoying theology autists that the pastor was trying to get rid of.
Yep. And those guys should not be within 10, 50, 100 feet of the pastorate, because they don't have the gift of rule. Paul speaks about those who labor well in ruling in the church in 1 Timothy 5. He's, let him be considered worthy of a double honor who rules well, particularly, especially those who labor in preaching and teaching. And so you really do have to start with the idea and understanding that God made a world where he made some people to be rulers and leaders, and he gifted them correspondingly. And he did not do that for everybody. And that just by the nature, we've talked about this in the hierarchy portion of last episode, by the nature of the way the world works, that is going to be a minority of people, because God gives leaders over tens, 50s, hundreds, and thousands. And that means that they'll always be outnumbered by the people that they're leading if we're doing it right.
Yep.
When we understand this as well, it helps the person who genuinely has this gift, meaning other people have affirmed in him. People tend to follow him when he goes somewhere. He tends to be proven persuasive when he's attempting to motivate or persuade people to go in some direction versus another direction. That's leadership and rule. He's able to set things in order such that they work harmoniously. The people that he rules over, when he's ruling over them, they are set in order and they begin to bear fruit in the things that they were gifted to do.
And it's a joy to those people.
It's a joy. When someone realizes they have that gift, and that it really is a gift from God, it does two things. It lets them, in humility, say, what do I have that I didn't receive? It was a gift. I'm not just great. I'm not just better than other people, than everybody else around me. God gave a gift. But then, in truly biblical humility, which includes a confidence in God's blessing and gifting, he can do what Paul says.
Be zealous.
And go be zealous and say, no, like to the church that is in disorder. In a lot of ways, the church, especially in the first 5 years of my pastorate, there was an enormous amount of disorder, chaos, poor teaching, poor discipleship, feminism, all sorts of things. And one of the things that early on had to be done was that I had to, and the other leaders had to say, we will rule zealously. We are going to say, this is what the Lord commands here. We're not doing it. We will obey the Lord.
What's interesting, because I think in the church, one thing I saw a lot early on in my early 20s and early 30s was this kind of thing where it's like people would lead, but it was almost seen as being reluctant about it was better.
Yeah.
Where you would say, well, lead, but kind of apologize for anything that you do that's authoritative and responsibility taking along the way. And I think it's just helpful to know, like, no, if you have the gift and other people confirm the gift in you, be zealous about that.
Yeah.
The other thing that Paul tells Titus, this is Titus 1:5. He says, for this reason I left you in Crete. Remember what Crete was like.
Lazy, gluttonous, right? Evil beasts.
This is a disordered, chaotic place. He said, for this reason I left you in Crete, that you would set in order. That's key. That you would set in order what remains and appoint elders in every city. So Paul looked at the situation. He said, Crete is a hot mess. There's chaos everywhere. And the thing that you need is fathers who rule well, who've been acknowledged at the church ecclesiastical level, that you have these gifts. You're really good at putting things in order. Mm-hmm. And so now I want you to do that in this context by appointing other leaders. So in a way, I kind of see that as what we're doing. Anywhere there's chaos, you find those men. One of the ways we do it here is we'll find a younger guy, not necessarily age-wise, but maybe somebody who hasn't experienced leadership in the church. We put him through the guild process, so he's not a deacon or an elder at this point, but you give him a small area. And you say, okay, I want you to be in charge of Tuesday night psalm sing. And you can just watch, Brian, like every single time it becomes abundantly clear who's gifted to order things well. Like you come in the next morning, all the trash is taken out, the tables are spick and span, the doors are locked, there's not homeless people living in the basement because the doors were left open. It's happened. And you'll just watch, and then the people around them will be like, hey, we decided to put this person in charge of another thing. And when they're good at leading, people will say, oh, praise God.
Oh, what that's a relief. Really been out of order. We've needed help there.
What a relief.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to identify, give people small opportunities to test this. And then I think at a more meta level, the way that you get to be like Titus, who's actually setting sort of like a bishop type role. He's over leaders because this is how it works. You ruled one thing well. Now you're able to actually rule men ruling well. And then you have eventually civilization.
Yeah, setting things in order looks like we talked about last time, Exodus 18, setting leaders. So one of the primal tasks of leaders is actually to establish, raise up, train other leaders. That's how things are set in order. You're actually setting the hierarchy in order. And you're identifying the gifts. You're noticing something God did. And then like Adam noticed that a certain rock in the ground was very dense. And so he picked it up and he realized that if he heated it up, and I'm just like Adam as humanity, and he melted it down and he could make something that could till the earth very effectively. There was something God did. He put that rock there. And then there was something man did in obedience to God's commands and in accordance with God's creation of his nature as an order setter, an order bringer, dominion taker.
Yeah.
This is what a good leader does. He notices who should rule. He establishes what they should rule in. He tests them. He trains them. He kicks some out. He elevates some. To some, all will be taken and given to others who are bearing its good fruit. It's an unequal and not non-communistic process. It's a meritocracy. It really should be, with humility and grace and virtue. And he's setting all of the things in order by setting the people in order, putting the right dominion takers in order, and then saying, the Lord bless you in your work. Be zealous in this. Be humble. Lead with zeal. And part of that leadership is certainly serve with zeal, but also lead with the kind of confidence in those areas.
Yeah, that's really good. I think one of the things, just on a practical level, this could be true for a business or a church, or really any organization where you have hierarchy, leadership, and people following. But Jim Collins describes this as like ordering the seats on the bus, which we've talked a little bit about. But you have to acknowledge also that there's going to be a process here. Mm-hmm. We have certain leaders who are overseeing, who's on the bus and what seats, what role are they doing. And I think one of the things I've noticed over the years is there's going to be a lot of rearrangement over time.
Yep.
And this requires a lot of humility, because sometimes you'll put a guy in a role, great guy, gifted, but not in that thing.
Yep.
And then you say, okay, we need to move. We need to move seats.
Yeah.
Because this isn't your wheelhouse. This isn't the thing you're good at. And this other guy, maybe he could do it better, whatever. And when this works well, I think of something like Kevin Griffin recently. Within the last year, we kind of changed his seat to make it more specific, where he was in charge of building maintenance.
Yeah.
Well, you have to understand, Kevin was a super, super gifted general contractor.
Yeah.
And a great man, a great pastor as well, great at counseling. But I kind of had this thought. I was like, wait a minute. Why do we have other people doing building maintenance?
This seems
Kevin
dumb.
is, because he would come to me. This is another way you identify a leader in a core area. He would come to me and he'd say, hey, I see these problems with building maintenance. I think here's a game plan to get 3 of them done in the next 3 months. Now, and you'll have this light bulb moment where you go, okay, sees the problem, has a working solution, competent to carry it out, experience. Holy cow, we should put that guy in charge of that.
Calculating.
And then I was thinking about this recently we've had a number of projects in the church, but even recently with a office remodel, the teacher said, hey, we would like to turn this space. We need another office. We would like to turn it into a usable office space. And so we gave Kevin the green light. He had a proposal, already came up with the proposal on his own in like a day. He said, here's how much it will cost. We gave the green light, and within 2 days, there are guys upstairs.
Oh, yeah.
Now almost done.
Yeah.
In like 2 days, almost done with the office. And Kevin's like, that is a guy who created order out of chaos.
Yes.
He is really good at that thing. Yeah. And so you naturally say, great fit, stay in that seat. You're doing an amazing job.
And a ruler in this sense also has to look at, often a ruler sees 100 problems, and he knows about all of them to varying degrees. And he also has to be capable of 50 people coming in and say, there's this problem, there's this problem, there's this problem, there's this problem, and saying, I know that's a problem, but it's number 40 on the list. We're not going to do anything about it right now. Or, hey, great, you noticed that problem. Here's some ways you could be the solution. But right now, our leadership team doesn't have bandwidth to go and solve that exact problem because we're doing this important work over here. So you see how rule requires zeal and confidence, along with gentleness and humility, to be able to interface with people well in a way that they don't feel like, well, you're just a huge jerk who's telling everybody all the time what to do. But at the same time, he's not vulnerable to empathy and emotional manipulation, where anytime he tries to lead, like you'll experience this, leaders, anytime you try to lead in a strong way to solve a real problem, especially a problem of people in an organization, the first thing that will happen is that they will all call you an arrogant jerk.
Oh, yeah. Well, and a big part of it, too, is, let's say the more difficult thing, like I described the Kevin Griffin, like that one is easy in one sense.
Yeah.
Because everybody's excited. But what happens when you go to the guy and you say, hey, I think you're in the wrong seat?
Yeah.
we need to change this. But what if they've built their identity around what they thought they were good at, but they're not?
Yeah.
And so what you end up doing in that situation is what's required of the leader, I should say, is you have to be really direct.
Yeah.
You have to shoot them straight. You are not passive aggressive. You are properly assertive. And you say, hey, we've looked at this. We've tried a few different things. I don't think this is your gifting. And so we need to make a change. And there can be all sorts of, this is where the, Friedman is where the concept of weaponized empathy that Joe Rigney's talking about, that's where it came from. And he said there's just organizations where, let's say your church is changing and you go to the Sunday school leader and it's a woman and you say, hey, we're not doing female rule anymore. We are, maybe even getting rid of Sunday school. There's a good chance that that person is going to fuss, complain, talk about how you're destroying her life, going to go talk to other people. Oh, the pastors, they don't appreciate my gifts and it's horrible.
Yeah.
You guys kind of had this years ago with women's ministry.
Yeah, when we removed all of the women from doing basically quasi-elder stuff.
Yeah.
Instead, women's ministry is going to be directly Titus 2, older women teaching the younger women to be workers at home, love husband and children. No more like Bible studies and this kind of thing. The men will be doing that, the elders. It's in the top 3 most aggressive opposition that I've faced as a leader were from those women. And anytime that you as a leader are confronting women, you'll find that you're at a disadvantage because the optics are always bad. When you confront a woman, it can look like a guy who's picking a fight with a lady. And guys who pick fights with ladies are often, we call them cowards a lot of the time, culturally. Like if you go pick a fist fight with a lady. But good leaders really do have to lead the women. And so it's not that they're picking fights with them, trying to get in conflict, but sometimes if someone insists on a fight with you, you can't always decline. Sometimes you actually have to go to bat and say, even to a church lady, you need to be quiet and you need to submit to the leaders of the church. And you need to do so cheerfully, the way that we teach our children to obey, right away, all the way with a happy heart.
And this is so much of it with Friedman, where he talks about having the nerve, right? To be able to, it's the J.D. Vance. How do you defeat that kind of weaponized empathy?
Oh, yeah.
You have to be able to say, frankly, Margaret, I don't care.
I don't care.
This is right. It's good for our nation, and we have to push forward.
Yeah.
Friedman will tell the story in his book a couple different ways and times, but like he would be speaking at something, and somebody would bring in like the colonization. You're just a white man and you're colonizing, blah, 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 blah. And he would say, that is wildly off topic. I do not care about your point. And if you would like to ask something relevant to the subject, I'll answer it. Otherwise, sit down and shut up. And
you have to do that sometimes.
You have to be able to have that. And I think even in the context of relationships in organizations with other men, where you say somebody could throw a fit and say, well, no, I'm not giving up the seat, or I'm not doing this thing. And then you say, yeah, no, I'm sorry. Like, this is what's best.
We weren't voting.
We're not voting. I'm telling you what's happening. And here's another, I'll drop kind of this in here. It's just, put a feather in your cap. But this was Gary Kubiak. And he had as a coach in the NFL, he was a Broncos coach.
Obviously, coach in the NFL.
Yeah,
like we all knew that.
Everybody knows this. But he a couple Super Bowls with the Broncos.
Obviously, a couple Super Bowls with the Broncos. I tip of my tongue.
The Super Bowl year, I think, was pivotal, though, because there was one point where Peyton Manning wanted to keep playing, but he was injured because he was like 107 years old at that point.
In football years.
Yes. And he's injured. And I think in the first half against the Chiefs, this is like midseason, he throws like 4 consecutive interceptions. He had no juice on the ball because his foot was hurt. Mm. And Gary calls him to the sidelines. He says, Peyton, this is not working. I'm benching you. Mm. And you could see it. Peyton is upset. Mm-hmm. They put in Brock Osweiler. Denver goes on this streak and they get back in the playoffs. They went from they looked awful to then they got the number 1 seed.
Wow.
They end up winning the Super Bowl. But here's the thing. As they go back into the playoffs, Brock has done all this to build the team up and get them in the playoffs. Peyton's healthy again. And he goes back to Brock and he says, Peyton is our guy. You're on the bench. Hmm. So you have a situation where he ticked both guys off.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he did what was good for the team and they won a Super Bowl. What's most fascinating to me, though, when you ask the players from that year, tell us the kind of coach Gary was. And they said, we appreciated him because he would call us in his office and he would say, look, here's the situation. Here's what I'm doing. I know it sucks, but this is best for the team.
Yep.
He didn't play games. He didn't hide the truth from them. He just shot them straight.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, they respected him he was honest with his players.
Yeah. And that is like when you talk about ruling with zeal, that's what it looks like. You are willing to be hated and disliked by a whole bunch of people to do what is best for the people, not to do his best for you, that's what it means to be a servant leader. You're serving the leader by leading them, not serving yourself. You're not leading the organization. Like a pastor's not thinking to himself, how can I increase tithes so that I can get the highest salary possible no, he's not thinking that. A good leader is thinking, I exist, I was gifted with this gift to serve the people of God, but here's where it goes off the rails. Often people say, and that means by being a doormat who never insists on anything, he's just constantly nice and liked by everybody. No.
You cannot be a people pleaser.
You will not serve well. What you will end up doing is you will serve the fussiest 5 to 20% of the people, and the other 95 to 80% of the people that are sitting over there who are actually bought in and would go follow you into the battle if you would stand up and lead. They sit there and think, what a coward. But here's what happens when a leader will take on the fussiest, angriest, most manipulative 5% of people. At first, nobody will stand with him. Almost all the time, this is how it works. At first, nobody will stand with him. He'll feel very alone. But then slowly over time, as he deals with those fussy people, often by removal, hopefully they repent, but just to be frank,
a lot of times it's self-selective.
Very few of them repent. Most of them leave. This is my experience. And what will happen is that you'll begin to see people who come up and they say, hey, Pastor, by the way, I really appreciate the way you handled that with Mrs. So-and-so. And I know that she was saying all kinds of stuff about you and it was really, really uncalled for. And I want you to know I have your back. In my family, we have your back and we're all in. And the leader has to be willing to endure the excruciating pain up front of rejection, hatred, reviling, etc., if he wants to experience the people actually being bought in, because the people need to see you going to bat.
Yeah.
They actually need to see you standing up and they need to see you taking punches. They need to see you leading courageously in controversial issues where it serves the people, making that call. Hey, Peyton, everyone's thinking it on the team. Dang, I wish Peyton would just would take the bench. Like he's not fit for this right now. And the coach makes the hard call. He makes the star player mad, but he serves the team. And then later, he serves the team again and he makes everybody mad again. But it's like, that's what leaders do. They're willing to say, sometimes the leader's willing to stand up and say, you're all wrong. And everyone's like, are you kidding me? We're all wrong. Yes, you're all wrong. God set me to lead. He gave me the gift. I see things you don't. This is where we're going.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately, like you said, having that good of the organization in mind. This kind of brings us to point number 2. Leaders must be self-differentiated.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm like, we're talking really about.
Yeah, it really is this idea that, this is how Friedman puts it in the book. He said, a self-differentiated leader is someone who has clarity about his own life goals and therefore someone who is less likely to become lost in the anxious emotional process swirling about in any institution. So this is someone who is grounded in their own principles, identity, vision, goals. Yeah. I heard this put really well recently in a talk by Chris Wiley, where he said, he was talking about his kids, but he said, particularly for the boys, he said, I want them to have edges. And he said, what I mean is they know where they end, other people begin, and vice versa. Yeah. And there's a sharp distinction. They know how to stand up for themselves. Yeah. They know how to, if they're going into a promotion, they know what they're worth. Yeah. And they're not rude to their boss, but they say, like, I'm not going to be taken advantage of. I think particularly for leaders, you just have to be so well grounded. You need the humility, but you also need to know you're not a straw poll guy. Like, you have principles, you have vision. So many times we've had this conversation in the church where people will come and they say, well, I think it would be more practical if we had a band and a smoke machine. But because you're so firm, and we are as leaders, on what our principles actually are, we hold them by conviction, not because it's pragmatic in the moment. Yeah. And then we're able to say, no, I'm not going to be pushed about by this. Yep. One example I want to give is just kind of from the manosphere. You saw this with a lot of guys where it's like they looked principled for 5 minutes when it was popular. But then like a year later, a couple years later, I guess, when it sort of petered out, I'm thinking like 2001 to 2003, like their whole personality would shift and they would become somebody totally different. And I would say, well, part of the problem with that is I don't think you're a self-differentiated leader.
Did you mean 2021 to 2023?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. I thought, wow, Eric is older than me.
Yes.
Maybe he remembers this, but yeah.
Right
I know
before
exactly.
World War II.
Right before
took off.
The great
1921. Yeah.
The day the towers fell. That was really when it all started.
But you're looking for this principled person. You have to be principled.
Yeah, you do see this where, and I can envision exactly. There's so many examples of this thing where you can have trend chasing where it's just this is in and so I'm going to ride it and then it's out and so I'm now a whole new person all of a sudden and like
I've reinvented myself.
Wow, and you know we saw this with people who would email us, oh dude, love what you're doing, like great stuff, and it'd be like literally about sext piety and some of these timeless principles that it's not that we didn't teach them until the manosphere stuff. It's that, yeah, at that point, a lot of eyes were on it, but it wasn't different stuff than what their timeless principles is the point. And then 2 years later, that person is like, they hate, basically their whole persona is how they hate you and your face and everything that you've ever said. And
attacking you on the same points that they
can't even imagine why any idiot would listen to you ever. And
yeah, they were praising before. Yeah.
A self-differentiated leader, it's not that he can never change his mind. It's not that he can't adapt to new situations. And there genuinely is a nature to the discourse. It's like a conversation at a dinner party over 3 hours. It doesn't have to stay on the same thing all the time. So yeah, sometimes we might be talking about sext piety and that might be more in the conversation. And then later, the political theory, and that's now more in the conversation with Christian nationalism, et cetera. That's fine. That's lawful. People should talk like that. That's human. However, a self-differentiated leader is very, very firm on their principles to the extent that even if everybody else in the room says we should do this and it's contrary to those principles he's convinced are true and true because God made the world that way and said it in his word and wrote it in the book of nature, he would say, you're all wrong.
Yeah.
You're all wrong, and this is what we should do.
So on a practical level, totally agree with that. On a practical level, one thing I think it's meant for us, when you're leading a complex organization, it's very time consuming. You're continually dealing with people problems, dealing with the operations of the organization itself.
Yeah.
And it becomes really important that you keep carving out some sort of sanctuary space in your life to keep reading, to keep cultivating your mind, to keep thinking through the things that you're convicted about.
Yeah.
You have to be a thinker. And so I think if you're going to remain self-differentiated and not pushed around by other people's emotional needs, whatever they are, you have to, for us, we've said like, you know, a lot of the great content in season 1 of King's Hall, season 1 and 2, was because you guys had spent, you know, what was it, like $100 in a year you were trying to get through. And I think got through more. But I know for me, it was like several years of probably reading 30, 40 books on sex piety and masculinity and William Gouge and going through that to the point where you're like, I have firm convictions about this. I'm willing to say ladies should not be ruling in the political sphere. And you get all this blowback and hate. Even now, I think people can forget this. Now we actually have a contingent of people who are like, yeah, I understand the argument and I agree with you. But back then there was almost no one.
Oh man.
Even our friends thought we were crazy.
The second, like people would agree in principle even, but the second you started to apply it, you said, so actually like this thing that even our friends are doing over here, we should probably not be doing that. All of a sudden it was like, you're like punching puppies out in public. You're an absolute like despot, tyrant. Like you just hate women. And we're like, no. Like come to the church. Like see the women in the church. This is what it looks like if you obey the principles we're seeing in Scripture and in nature. And but yeah, dude, it was like even still today. In the way that I've rediscovered this, I've blocked so many of these people that I like forgot that they exist. But Lexi hadn't been very, active on X, and she started engaging in more of the like Titus 2 female communication stuff. She wrote the book Wisdom on Her Tongue, that is just solidly Titus 2. Like ladies, especially married women, here's how to communicate in marriage.
Order now at newchristianpress.com/wisdom.
But before the book is even out, all of the usual suspects that I blocked 2 years ago were all of a sudden just absolutely reviling and frothing at my wife online. And I discovered this because I have the login to her Twitter and I go through there every once in a while and just block people that are being rude. Because she's not going to be a pugilist online arguing with people. That's not I wouldn't permit it. She doesn't want to. So I will go and block people for her and just clean up the timeline. And I think I blocked so far probably 300 plus accounts. Wow. That
it's probably usually it's like the reformed patriarchy women.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a lot of them also are people who are like, yeah, I used to really like, the Sauvays back before they were huge, like enormous jerk faces and all this stuff. And the thing is, we're doing exactly the same thing we've been doing for 5+ years. And we haven't changed. We've just steadily applied these things and talked more about them in more detail. And, you're this evil person or you're like that evil person. And it's just, you really have to be self-differentiated to say, no, the very loud, wrong people are still wrong. Very angry, wrong people are still wrong. And if I obey them, it will still bear a really bad fruit in the people that I actually am in charge of serving.
Right.
And if I fail at this point, just because people are loud and angry, my people will suffer. And this is how important it is. When we're talking about something like sexed piety, my people will suffer and their children's children will suffer. Because these are things that, as they're landed in the home and in the church and in the community, they either make or break the long-term fruitfulness of a community. So you just have to be willing to say, and over time it gets easier because more and more people are one and behind you and giving kind of a resume to the idea. So you can say, these aren't just words, but look at these families and people and they're doing well and they're bearing good fruit. And then more and more, it's like when Paul says, let your reasonableness be known to all people. He doesn't mean that let everybody say that you're nice, saying be reasonable, live in accordance with reason, with truth. Sometimes that means standing contra mundum against a lot of angry people.
Yeah.
But when you do that, the resume over time becomes this large body where only an unreasonable person could look and say, yeah, that's a really dangerous idea. That's why it's bearing such good fruit in 200, 400, 500 families. That's where it becomes your reasonableness is being known to all people as your resume of leadership grows. And then you can more and more just say, here's the idea. Don't just take my word for it. Look at that family over here. Look at this church community. Look at this. We're not trying to rob you. We're trying to help you.
Yeah, I also think part of the self-differentiation that's important that comes in is, so that's with audience and maybe church members or people who attend the church. But also we've kind of found it with important alliances. They change over time.
Yeah.
And there can be points where you have to disagree with friends. You have to disagree with, and hopefully you can do it peacefully. But to be able to say, no, we're grounded enough in our principles. We're actually not with you on that thing.
Yeah.
Love you, bless your camp, whatever. But that's not us. Mm-hmm. Because I do think, obviously, one thing that happens is, we talk about it online, but it is true. Everybody kind of gets the call at some point. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z to remain on my team. And I think that's a point of self-differentiation to be able to say, hey, appreciate that. Appreciate you. Love a lot of things you guys have done. No.
Yeah.
I'm not going down that track. Not with you. We can be at peace.
Yeah.
But you have to recognize that a lot of people won't be at peace with you.
Right.
Because you choose to be differentiated in that way.
Yeah.
The one kind of caveat I would give, or just kind of warning for people, we're not encouraging people to be theological autists. Mm-hmm. We're not saying be as divisive as possible.
Yeah.
I think in general, you should be known as a guy who's reasonable and kind while also being self-differentiated.
Yeah.
I don't know. I developed this kind of mindset about the guys on our team where I'll use Kevin Griffin again. If you ever thought that you could go to Kevin and get him to just toss away a principle for what was expedient, can you imagine if somebody tried?
No, he just wouldn't do it.
He, in the right and best possible way, he is an immovable man.
Yeah.
On his principles.
And he can be persuaded and change his mind and come to new information. And this is good counseling. You're constantly learning. You're not giving your answer within 10 seconds. You're hearing everybody out and your mind can change, but the principles don't change. Kevin would never say, yeah, I think that, in this counseling situation, the wife is really totally wrong, but just for the peace, we really just need to kind of back off on this. He would explode, his head would explode before he would do that. Or even, with when you're, believe it or not, when you're leading on a team in a complex leadership environment, like the church in Ogden and all the different things. We don't always agree on the elder team. We don't always agree like on lots of things. And it can take us 6 months. It can take us a year of discussion and back and forth and getting more information and coming to like-mindedness to really align on different things. But the process, it can be full of sparks. But what we can know is that, when you've got guys like Kevin on the team, like Eric on the team, who are like, we're going to make sure that we do what needs to be done for the good of the people that we've been given to serve, according to the principles that we're convinced from Scripture and reason are the correct principles. We're not going to move on those.
Yeah.
And we're willing to experience loss rather than move on those.
Yeah.
And you absolutely need those. And it's not just theoretical. You will experience loss if you won't move on those things. But the thing is, if the more that you start to capitulate on them, it's a very slippery slope.
Yeah.
It's hard not to lose your footing altogether and tumble down the hill.
Yeah. No, that's right. Number 3, leaders must be dealers in hope. So this is really a stealing of the quote from Napoleon, who said, leaders are dealers in hope.
Yeah.
But I found this interesting. A recent study said that 84% of Americans have a negative outlook about the future. Mm-hmm. It's quite a high percentage. And you can understand why. It is pretty bleak out there. But in the midst of this, leaders, I think, must be those who put forward a positive vision for the future. And I think one of the things that this is tied to, obviously, as we've talked about in the past, is the post-mill vision. I think you can still have mill and pre-mill guys who are positive in providing hope in general for their people. But I know it's been a big category for us that I think it attracted me here as well because, like when we would talk with Dan, mm-hmm. You guys weren't like, yeah, man, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. Like, there's really nothing we can do about it. It was contagious because you guys would say, yeah, things are horrible, which means opportunity everywhere. And I think if you want to attract people long-term and keep attracting them, mm-hmm. you've got to be the kind of guy that looks at problems and sees opportunities. Mm-hmm. You've got to be the kind of guy who says, there's no way that we can defeat Islam. Oh, yes, we can.
Oh, yes, we can.
And I think that's part of why we started even New Christendom Press. Mm-hmm. I think I wanted to do it, but I was more pessimistic mm-hmm. about the reality of it working out. And there was many points where I was like, these guys are crazy. Pie in the sky, head in the sand. And you guys were like, no, the Lord's good. Like, we're going to be able to do this. And now I look back and I go, I kind of feel like Gehazi, Elisha's servant, right? Where he's like, Master, we're going to be destroyed. And he's like, Lord, open his blind little eyes. And then, it's like he looks up and there's legions of the Lord's armies with them. So I do think we have to see the world differently with this lens of hope. You cannot be, I've never known a great leader who is functionally a constant pessimist.
No, absolutely not. Like, I'm probably to a fault a wild optimist. And I think it's legitimate because when I think about, I tweeted today, like the elites don't want you to know this, but you can just repent of your sin and trust in Christ and be free. Like it's all free. Jesus paid for it. Like you can just do this. When you think about just that little one person before the Lord kind of situation, okay, think of the worst thing that could happen. You could really blow it. Like the worst thing really would be for you to apostatize and never repent and all that. Okay, let's see, you really blow it though. You sin big. Okay, repent. The Lord, like think of the prodigal son. That is the core of the gospel we believe. Okay, now widen that scope all the way up to the history of the world. He must reign until he puts all his enemies under his feet. The last enemy to be defeated is death. So even death is going to be defeated. The nations are going to stream to Zion for instruction. The nations are going to come in such that all of the tongues and tribes of the world, they're going to stand before the throne of Christ and worship together in eternity in his kingdom. And this is working itself out like leaven through the world in history. This is not in the last 30 seconds or right at the eschaton, all of a sudden the switch is flipped and all of the work is done. No, God's working it out like leaven. The kingdom of heaven is like leaven that a woman hid in 3 measures of flour till it was all leavened. You could go on with the kingdom parables. So when I look at the world and the task that God's given us, it's not just a spiritual task. It is a spiritual task, but it's also a task that swallows up the whole world every part of what it means to be human. And so I'm just wildly optimistic, not naively. Like I know there's going to be really bad downturns and there's going to be nations that fall and empires that pass away. And this is a long, long project. But when I take those two things together, one, that no matter what, the worst that they can do is kill me. And the worst that I can do is sin really bad. And Christ can forgive even that and restore even that. And on the meta level, he's like Christ wins. Christ is the King of kings, and all the enemies are being put under his feet. So when I think of that, and then I look at the world that God made, and I say, and God called a people to himself, and he gave them lavish gifts. And in a congregation like ours, I look out and I don't see a bunch of liability or like problems. I see a huge potential. I'm like, whole peoples could come from this group.
Yeah.
What could that businesses that employ half of the city could come from this group?
Well, it's interesting too. I think this is, so there's sort of like the meta level where you're thinking about the world and the glory of Christ and Christendom. But I even think it's just like, how do you deal with your daily problems in a positive light? And I'm thinking about like Paul in Philippians. It's so fascinating to me. He's in prison at the time of writing, but it's so fascinating that he looks at his prison and he goes, even my imprisonment has turned out for the glory of Christ and my good.
Yeah.
And then he actually goes through the mental exercise of how. Mm-hmm. And he goes, well, the people in prison have come to know Christ. Mm-hmm. He said, actually, the message has been furthered through my preaching from prison. Mm-hmm. And one of the long-term effects, I think, which is so interesting, is that if Paul had not been imprisoned many times, that is what afforded him the time to do all the writing.
Oh, we wouldn't have the letters.
Yeah, we wouldn't have the letters.
It's prison epistles.
And so it's just fascinating to me. Again, just that the Lord in his kindness was using hardship and then working through Paul to say, how can you find the silver lining in whatever you're going through, actually to see how it's for the good?
Yeah.
So I think you can cultivate that in many ways in your personal life. Mm-hmm. I've looked at it through hardship and suffering. How do you process those? And, you could say like, wow, we had so many hard years in seminary and we had so many financial hardships early because of the whole like poverty gospel mindset. But now I look at it and I go, the Lord was showing me something about the state of the system, the regime, whatever you want to call that within evangelicalism. And now we have some answers to some of those things at least. And I think I never would have had sort of the messaging and thoughts that I had that have come out in the podcast had it not been for those experiences.
Yep.
The Lord was doing a kindness. Mm-hmm. And so I think just in general for people, and we do this in the counseling room, trying to help them see how God's providential working in their life is for their good. I always recommend like John Flavel's book on providence. Mm-hmm. You read that book and then you're going to come away a more hopeful person.
Yeah. And
so just as leaders, you have to be that. I think really important. Mm-hmm. Number 4, practicing stable presence. Friedman will talk about being a down transformer.
Yeah, in conflict.
In an electrically charged, conflict-ridden situation. Yeah. So on the one hand, leaders have to be the kind of people who are running into the building where it's on fire and everybody's running out. You literally cannot be a conflict-averse person.
No.
But then when you go in there, we often talk about being irenic as pastors.
Yeah.
But when you go in there, I guess the whole picture, first of all, is like current is running through a line. Mm-hmm. And some transformers amp it up and pass it on.
Yeah.
That's like bad leadership. But what Friedman is advocating for is be a down transformer, meaning the current runs through and you actually take it down. Mm-hmm. You step it down. So an example of this would be, I'm going to use something from Valvoline, but a lady comes in the store and she's like screaming at me, you messed up my car. I can't believe this, blah, 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 blah. Just irate, screaming, spitting mad, like literally spitting mad. And I said, okay, great. Well, let's pull the car in and we'll take a look at it. And if there's something that we screwed up, we'll definitely be happy to fix that. Mm. And she immediately was like, oh, okay. And then she gets in and we're like, actually, ma'am, she had tried to change her own air filter and she had unplugged the mass airflow sensor. And your car won't run when you do that. Mm. And so I said, well, ma'am, actually, it looks like you have an AutoZone filter that was put in here, and this thing is not plugged in. So we plugged it in for you. Start your car up. Let's take it around the block, see how it goes. Works fine. And she was like, man, y'all are the best. Right. But what would have happened if I would have said, oh yeah? Which, by the way, I would have loved to do.
No.
Are you fronting on me?
Yeah.
But you can't do that.
Yeah.
And so, and you think about leadership and all the pastoral experiences. Somebody comes in, they're super teed off in the counseling room.
Yeah.
You have to be irenic. You have to down transform. So your take, why is that so important for a leader?
Well, because leaders are dealers in hope, but leaders are also merchants in conflict. Like
that's a good idea.
You're basically, when you think about leading, you're going and ordering chaos, and
which is where conflict exists.
And in human society, typically that means that there's something wrong that's not optimal or that's really bad. Like between it's just not optimal all the way down to like everyone's dying and their hair is on fire. Okay, so a leader is ordering people primarily and things, but the people mainly. Most of that ordering will involve either stepping into existing conflict, starting conflicts that should have been started long ago, but everybody's been papering over, or dealing with, some variation of the two. You're starting some conflict, there's some existing conflict. You're picking a fight, but it's the right fight so that you can actually bring peace. You're not into conflict for conflict's sake. You are into conflict for peace's sake. So leaders have to do this constantly. And if a leader if you're the type of person who would get burned out and you would hate your life within 48 hours, if the idea of having 5 hard conversations a day and looking at a situation that nobody else wants to touch and actually being the one that makes the call and say, hey, everybody get together. We're talking tomorrow at 2 p.m. If that idea of that makes you tremble and run, and you're not a leader. Leaders are people who can go, first of all, they see it. They see what's happening. They know what it would take to bring order, and then they're willing to go in and do it. And in practice, what that looks like is not letting the conflict heat you up, but coming in and being the person that you diffuse and you solve. And yeah, you do hard things. Sometimes you do say things that make the heat hotter for a minute, but it's for the sake of cooling things down in the long haul. There is no leadership that doesn't involve this.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I've seen it at the pastoral level. Let's say you have conflict in a family, could be like another pastor. Let's say it's the main pastor involved with conflict with one of his elders and his wife. And, I remember talking to like the lead pastor, say in a situation like this and saying, hey, here's the problem. Here's what needs to be done. And they would say something like, yeah, I think you're right. But here's the deal. Like, she's going to be mad. He's going to be mad. I tell you what we'll do. Let's just see how it plays out and hope for the best. No, but I've seen this so many times where like they'll even admit like, yeah, I think you're right. But fundamentally, I don't want to do the hard thing and go be the peacemaker because there's going to be weeks of my time of dealing with this hardship. And so they do nothing. Problem gets worse. A lot of times we'll actually destroy a church.
One of the ways
people will leave because they see that you're not dealing with conflict.
Oh, yeah. Those 80% of quiet people would have had your back if you've been courageous. One of the ways to identify leaders like this is to find leaders with really good wives and really well-ordered families, because there's no way of getting there. You don't just randomly luck into a family where everything works well, because there's always people. Like you have like a well-discipled young woman and a well-discipled young man come together and they get married and they don't have to have blow-up fights. And but still, over time, without constant maintenance relationally, even something that starts very well can quickly devolve or even slowly devolve into chaos and bitterness where sins are piling up. So you go and find people who have order around them in their immediate sphere, and you're probably looking at someone who knows how to be a down transformer of conflict and who knows how to not let things go, but to go solve them. This is one of the things that you are very good at, Eric, and that you brought to our team in Ogden. I thank God for that. It used to annoy me. I think I've said it before, maybe even on the King's Hall. But at first it really annoyed me because I found you to be meddlesome. I was like, why is Eric constantly picking at this or that or meddling? And it took me, I think, 2 years. It took me a little while to actually figure out you weren't meddling, but you have been gifted in a large measure in this kind of leadership that notices, and you can't sleep at night if you don't go in and help bring order into a conflict or a situation and say, no, we can't let this keep going. Have you guys been seeing this? And a lot of times it's obvious to you and not to everybody around you because you have this gift. And so I've seen this play out. I've learned a lot from it. I've learned more and more to kind of squelch the instinct of let it play out and really amp up the instinct of that's my job. That has to be fixed. So an encouragement for people around leaders of this type, if you're not that way, you will probably identify this person in an organization possibly as a troublemaker sometimes. And there are troublemakers that need to be dealt with, but make sure you're not actually misdiagnosing that someone really, they're actually just a person who sees problems and they want to fix them rather than continue to work around them.
Yeah, that's one of the dangers, I think, is if you do have people in your organization who are good at seeing a problem, calling attention to it, and then working for a solution, a lot of times people will treat them as the problem.
Yes.
Right? Like if you would just ignore this stuff, we could live in more peace.
Yeah.
But I do think you're right. I think it really requires like team understanding, because this is kind of like the coach role. We talk a lot about this, whether it's, Vince Lombardi or Phil Jackson or whatever, some of my favorites, but you end up doing a lot of tinkering. And I think when the thing is running well and you've dealt with the majority of big conflicts, the tinkering is easy because you're just like, let's tweak that. Let's tweak this.
Yep.
But I think Jim Collins describes it this way. He said, great leaders have a sort of paranoia about them, where they're looking forward in the future and they're saying, "Oh, that could be a problem." Now you're not doom forecasting,
no,
but you're saying, "Oh, if I don't deal with this now, I know what that's going to be," and it could be small.
Yeah,
it could be a disagreement in a meeting you saw with two of your coworkers, and you sit there and you go, "I know, I saw the look on his face. I know he was mad.
Yep,
this elder was mad." And so generally, what I will do is I will bird dog those out.
Yep.
And I will go, "Hey, can I ask you, when such and such said this, I saw the look on your face, and if I was in your shoes, I can understand it coming across this way." And a lot of times it'll be like, "Oh, yeah, thank you."
Yeah.
Yes, I did feel that way.
Yeah.
And then what I will say, I might go to the other person and say like, "Hey, I think this person was offended. Let's get together and let's work through that issue." And then what you do is you catch problems early, so that you don't have, these decades-long beefs with people or, people silently plotting against each other. Yeah. You're kind of the one who's continually fostering peacemaking conversations. Now, to your point earlier, again, in a lot of tribes, that person will be really annoying.
Yeah, they absolutely can be. And that person, like everybody has pitfalls. They have to make sure that they are not being malcontent and that they're not budgeting for some amount of, imperfection and like lack of efficiency.
You definitely also need to be merciful.
Got to be merciful. And and you are like people are, it's funny. My wife said this the other day. She was like, people think Eric is just like a huge jerk. They don't realize that he's actually very shepherdly in his demeanor and merciful. And it's true. Like you genuinely do this well. And the net result is that there is actually increased pain often up front, but manifold peace on the back for the long haul.
Yeah, it's a good point I think you bring up. Friedman talks about this, and we've talked about it a lot in the organization. Well, both really. He said people will generally put up with a low-grade pain that will kill you rather than have a sharp moment of pain where you actually fix it.
Yep.
So knowing that about human nature, that we tend to be conflict avoiders.
Yes.
Well, let's say we'll just let this, sore knee just remain forever. And then eventually it wears out your hip and you need a hip replacement, or it wears out your knee. So one of the things you have to cultivate is saying, let's have those hard conversations up front.
Yep.
Let's just be direct. Let's be reasonable with each other.
Yep.
Let's be patient and kind and all those things too.
Yep.
But organizationally, to have good leaders operating well, you can't be the kind of organization that is just kicking your problem. Like that's future me's problem.
Yeah, that's future me's. And the thing is, in pastorates where pastors last 3 to 7 years on average, they can do that. And that's why they last that long.
Yeah.
When you see a pastor who has longevity in a role, like John MacArthur with 50 years of ministry in one place, you're often looking at someone who both in their leadership and in the team that they built or the Lord put around them, that there's typically going to be a high degree of stability, down transforming of conflict, handling problems well, because you can only do that over a long period of time. You simply can't walk into even a medium-sized church or medium-sized business and solve all of the problems in a year.
No.
You will actually blow things up if you try to do that.
I think, too, you're right. As people, like, we're in the kind of era of people stay at a job for like 18 months to 3 years.
Right.
And so if you're only there for 3 years, it's not worth it. But we've all said in our context, like, we burn the boats, we're here. It's helped. It's a little bit like a marriage because you're like, well, we're in this kind of for life.
Yeah.
So we better figure it out. And if it takes a couple years to figure some things out, that's fine.
I've been here been attending this church in leadership, for like, I think 16 years at this point, in leadership for many of those years. And there are still things that, especially as the organization grows and changes, that I figure out for the first time, all the time.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh yeah. You'd think that in 5 years you would have figured it all out. Absolutely not. It's why in our leadership guild and in training, and especially diaconal and elder ministry in our church, we very much avoid laying hands on men who are younger than about 30, and which is ironic because I just said that, and I was ordained at like 21, something stupid like that. I wouldn't do it that way now. But what we tend to select for now are men who have 10 to 15 years of good stability in their life already, in their home and business and whatever else they've put their hand to, and then have desire, aptitude, opportunity. And then we say, let's give you training and test you out for a role like a deacon or an elder, or even just in a churchman guild where we're training men just to be good men in the church. And the reason that we're doing that is because over time, as an organization gets more mature and grows more and more, you start to see the value of that depth of stability and the depth of provenness in fruit, that and how valuable that truly is over time. And those people are always going to be people that have had 5, 10 plus years in the saddle of just like proven they can handle conflict, they can handle problems.
That's easier too. Like when you're thinking about, even for our people, we're looking for long-term.
Yeah.
Like leaders are long-term investments. Mm-hmm. But are you going to make a long-term investment if you know somebody's going to be here for 2 years?
No.
And we've had a lot of people ask like, hey, could I come to your church and be trained for a year and then you send me out? And we're like, no. It's
not that we wouldn't love that if that were possible. It's just not possible.
Oh.
There's not enough time.
No, it's,
you couldn't catch nearly everything you need to catch in a year here.
No, you can't microwave leaders.
Absolutely not. And this is one of the big failures of the church planting movement out of the Young, Restless, and Reformed, out of the Acts 29 world, is that they were so focused on the franchising model of church planting that they began to send out men who were not only untrained, they were untested. They didn't have any kind of depth or stability or length. And there genuinely is a balance here where we do want youth and zeal and vigor, and you need to direct that well into the good of the church and people. But a lot of the time where we direct that now, these young men, like men in their 20s, I'm not telling them, you know what, you need to be a pastor next year and plant a church in 3 years. I'm telling them instead, you need to learn how to be the best possible husband and father. I want you to do, whether it's start a business or be excellent in your career field for a season of time, cook in this church's culture for 5 years and maybe go through some training as well formally along the way. And out of that, you will be so ready to step in and serve others in this church in leadership.
Yeah.
You'll be ready to transmit things that you've genuinely deep in your bones know.
And you can still pipeline guys and give them opportunities to grow.
It's just get that pipeline further back.
Right.
So that you have the luxury of, we've recognized, man, it'd be great to have 4 more elders right now. So the thing to do is to say, well, when should we have started our leadership pipeline 10 years ago? Well, now it's been a couple years with this leadership pipeline in place, and the fruit is coming out the other end to where you're like, wow, this guy could be an elder. He's so good. Let's invite him into candidacy. We got a guy coming into candidacy right now, Lord willing. And you're just like, this is such a good, solid guy.
Yeah.
But you look back, where did he start in the process? Even with us, it was years ago.
Yeah. And I think that's the other part is like being able to identify like an 18-year-old, 20-year-old, 21, 23, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, here's what you need to do in your 20s and your mid 30s so that, you know, you're being trained, you're getting qualification. And then by 40, 35 to 40 would be more ideal for participation in a lot more of the actual like diaconal elder functions of the church. And it is cool because like now we're like, well, we have time.
And then you have this power band from like 25 years, from 35 to 60, where you have the vigor still in body and you have the seasoning and maturity, and you can just be massively fruitful. And every once, like there are exceptions providentially too. I think sometimes you look at a younger man and you say, you know what, this is that one guy in 1,000 that at 26, he's got the qualification. He's got the maturity. He's got 10 years of good fruit, maybe, you know, maybe got married young. And like there are exceptions too, but generally speaking, like John MacArthur, I mean, he was ministering for 50 years. How old was he when he started? It must've been quite.
Around
30 probably.
20s.
In his 20s, I'd imagine. I don't know. I've never actually listened to a whole John MacArthur sermons. I don't really know a lot about him, but I just look at him from afar and say, like, wow, being a pastor, a guy who pastors for 50 years in one place.
Yeah, he even told this story early on in his ministry where like he was training a couple men to be pastors and they led a coup against him. Like tried to overthrow him. He had to like start over.
Oh, good.
So yeah, you're going to have ups and downs, but I think the longevity is really incredible.
No, that's really true.
It is so true, King. So true, King. Speaking of kings, you're not really a king if you don't have a people.
Once again.
So point number 5, you need a tribe, Brian.
The
segue, the transition.
They're just, everyone knows your transitions are out of control.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah, you need a tribe. And this functions on multiple levels. You need a tribe of leaders together. Very rarely do you find anything great where there's just a guy. You need a tribe of leaders, but then also you need a tribe that you're the thing you're leading is a tribe.
Yeah, it was interesting because when I started the Hard Men podcast, I became aware of this. Like, there's only so much you can accomplish by yourself, and but you also look around the church, especially, and you say it's really hard to find anybody who shares the same vision, wants to build over the long haul like you do. And one of the things I really just encourage people, I spent years looking for the right tribe.
Yeah.
At least 5. And we moved a couple times trying to find it, didn't work out, got disillusioned, whatever. And I do remember saying to Dan, well, I've looked everywhere, and I told him at the time, I was like, I'm never moving for a church again. And then I moved for a church again. But Dan told me, and I think rightly, he was like, well, I thought he was going to empathize with me in my plight. And he looked at me and he was like, well, I mean, that's just bad logic. He's like, you're saying follow. Because all these bad things have happened, the next one will be bad too.
Yeah.
So I guess the effort it takes to find a tribe. One of the things I ran into a lot was you're not probably going to find your tribe just by attending the next thing that's easiest to attain, like a church service, or same with the relationships. Like, well, we just happened to meet, and you're like, okay, but you know, happenstance isn't always the best indicator of whether it's going to be quality. So encouraging people to invest in this. And I wanted to share something that I was reading recently, rereading from The Gates of Fire, historical fiction by Stephen Pressfield about the Spartans at Thermopylae. So this is a quote from the book. There's an older man who is mentoring a younger boy. And it says, this was the first time and the only time that the boy saw his old mentor truly physically angry. He seized the boy by both shoulders and shook him violently, commanding him to face him, because the boy had been a coward in a situation. He said, listen to me, boy. Only gods and heroes can be brave in isolation. A man may call upon courage only in one way, in the ranks with his brothers in arms, the line of his tribe and his city. Most piteous of all states under heaven is that of a man alone, bereft of the gods of his home and his polis. A man without a city is not a man. He is a shadow, a shell, a joke, and a mockery. No one may expect valor from one cast out alone and cut off from the gods of his home. End quote. So Pressfield's really, I think he's capturing the Greco-Roman ideal of piety, pietas, which was devotion to one's God, but also to one's city and fathers. So this, for them, it would have just been absurd if you said like, well, I'm going to go live on my homestead and I'm going to be a brave, courageous, great man. And they would be, that's absurd. That's like saying I'm going to go live underwater and be a fish. So what they're getting at here is something lacking in our day. We need powerful male friendships. Even in Bap, reading his book, he talks about the power of tribes that ruled this time period in history. It was never one guy. It's like, so you think of Jason and the Argonauts or David and his mighty men. It's always a tribe of people accomplishing great things. So I just want to ask you, I guess, why do you think it's so hard today for men to form, first of all, masculine friendships, but then to have tribes of men who are ruling well together?
Well, we have such a cultural militancy against this kind of formation because we don't like.
Well, DEI actually
it makes
tries
it illegal.
To kill this.
Yeah, like most places, actually illegal. Like in a company, pretty much illegal. They will put you in jail or destroy your company if you try.
Well, that's actually the irony. I was thinking about this with Amazon. My brother worked there, and he was saying, like they would have like the gay group and they would have like the trans group. But he went to them and he was like, I'm starting a group. It's for men only. And they were like, we will fire you. And you're like, wait, I don't understand. You're not allowed to assemble, which is actually a violation of the Constitution, by the way. Freedom to assemble.
Longhouse culture doesn't like a man. It definitely doesn't like men. So men, the thing about men is they don't truly become fully men until they are together with other men in some context. I don't mean like you're not a man when you're alone and then all of a sudden you're a man when you're in a group, but that it takes a group of men to create men who are fully formed and forged into men. So male spaces are particularly hated by a longhouse culture because of their maleness. It's not that they'll allow things that are like male spaces that are fake. Like they would be fine with like men going to group therapy.
Group therapy, that's what I was thinking of.
They'd be fine with that. They'd be fine with men going to a gay orgy.
Yeah.
Right. Like, but they wouldn't be fine with a group of men who are just being actual men, becoming more manly as they, love one another and grow in friendship. But it's, even that though, the system can't keep it down. Look at the popularity of Top Gear, for example.
Yeah.
Massive popularity of that show. Why is it? Well, because that show is a great example of what it looks like when dudes just get together and hang out and vibe. A lot of cussing in that particular show from what I understand. But my dad watched it. Like I know Ben has probably seen every episode more than once. It's that kind of thing. So it still breaks through the cracks because you can't suppress nature all the way.
Nature always finds a way, Brian.
Nature finds a way. But we do have to just recognize from the get-go that one of the reasons it's so difficult today is because our whole culture militates against it. This is changing, though. I mean, as the Zoomer and the younger generations come up, the men of those generations are absolutely based. And they are, like, you can just see it in the culture that's coming up on the Instagram Reels and TikTok culture and these sorts of things. Yeah, male spaces are coming back.
Well, I think this is kind of eye-opening, too. It's a helpful thing to understand. If the longhouse hates it so vehemently, it's actually one of the keys to destroying the longhouse is for men to simply gather. Because here's the reality. Like, you may have to do it in sort of a unique way. You're probably not going to be able to do it in your corporation. But you can still, like we've done it. You can have male spaces.
Yeah.
Let's say hypothetically a company were to say like, we're not going to allow women in the workforce. I don't know which person did this.
I don't know.
But I'm saying hypothetically,
what if
they did? And what if it existed? I mean, you can actually do those things. And, but I think, again, what it's going to take is men realizing the potency of it. I think getting out of their comfort zones. I think one of the things that I realized was corporate America kind of works to destroy these friendships by forcing you to move every 2 years. Because when you relocate, you dislocate all those friendships.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of it. But also, you just I think men do also have to, you can't be drowning in this, burnout of corporate America.
Yeah.
You've got to actually find ways to interface with your bros. I will say this too. This is one of the reasons we spend so much time, men's camping trips, men's shooting events, golf. Mm-hmm. We put a premium on having time for the guys to hang out and bond, and for Tate Taylor to do his brutal American stuff.
Catch raccoons barehanded.
No one on the 17th hole of a golf course.
No one asked him to do this. No one at all. And yet he found in his spirit the American will to greatness, to capture baby raccoons with his bare hands.
It is actually funny because when some of that went down, and we were just having a good time, and some of the people who were newer to the group were kind of like, at first there was this look of like, what is going on? Is this allowed? And by the end of it, they were hooting and hollering and be like, let's go.
The golf course is like, this is not allowed. Eric's like, it is allowed.
This is, by the way, it was a hypothetical situation.
Yeah, this is all satire.
It's all satire. It didn't actually happen. But I'm saying, what if it did?
Yeah, what if though? That would have been cool. What if there was video of it online?
So I just think it's like there is a different vibe. Now, here's what's crazy. People are never going to understand this from the outside. Our women enjoy it.
Yes.
They're like, our guys have friends with other men. We love that. And they have good lady friendships too. Mm-hmm. But it is not a female-dominated culture.
How many raccoons do they catch?
Or didn't they catch?
The women usually call to come shoot the raccoons that they find in their properties.
Yes.
Totally legally.
Like hypothetically.
And when I say that's a pseudonym.
A pseudonym. Yeah. But no, it is just funny. You watch how the groups do wildly different things when they get together.
Yeah.
The ladies are like, oh, let's knit.
Let's knit.
Yeah,
they saw the raccoon and they're like, we could make a good hat from that. Let's go.
The level of male hazing that was going on the golf course that day, hypothetically, was incredible. Yeah. Number 6, this gets into some tribe stuff too, and we won't beat this one to death. We talked about it last episode, but you have to be able to move from tribe 3 to tribe 4. Mm-hmm. So the book Tribal Leadership, again, a community that's about the individual moving to the we, from the I to the we, super important, and you need tribal leaders to cultivate that. Brian, I think particularly for your job, one of the ways it functions, because you're communicating, you're leading in that way of verbal communication to a lot of people at once. That's where a lot of this vision is transmitted that gets people onto the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if I went and I had a conversation with all 500 people who attended church a Sunday ago or 2 Sundays ago, I don't know that it would produce the same tuning fork mechanism where it's like one sermon, one message, we all heard it. Why is that function of public speech so important for developing this tribe 4 mentality?
Because the context where you're all eating the same food are very important. So that includes the same intellectual food, the same rhetorical food. When you're being formed by the same words, the same word of God preached, the same podcasts listened to, the same, like mass communication is very, very important. There's a reason that political speeches still put a premium on a lot of people gathering in a campaign, and they say, wow, 1 million people came out or 200,000 people came out to hear this politician cast the vision for what he wants to do with the office that he's running for. So these are conversations where you think about them like, yeah, if there's 500 people there on a Sunday and I preach for 45 minutes to all of them, you've just put in, 400 hours or 300 and something hours of communication, man hours, listening hours of the people. I couldn't accomplish that in a whole week of 24/7 meetings. Like that's how the math works. But at the same time, it's also powerful because it is like a tuning fork. It's like the conductor standing in front of the symphony and hitting middle C. And then the strings come in, and then the horns come in, and then everybody slowly comes in and they sing that middle C all together, or they play that middle C and they all get in tune. And then they can play a song together where they're all different and they all go out in their own ways. So one sermon is going to speak to 500 people in 500 different ways because the Lord made the world that way. It's very important in those sermons. And you guys have been good at this because I've actually tended from the pulpit particularly to sort of overcorrect away from some of the, I think in the Acts 29 world, not to pick on them again, but there was a lot of pastors telling stories about how great they were. Like where the pastor would sit down and be like, today the sermon is called, I Am Literally Nehemiah. And it's going to be about, believe it or not, how I am literally Nehemiah, me, the pastor. And so I just wanted to point that out, all the ways that I am literally like Nehemiah. And that really, I think there's a way in which great men who are great rhetoricians, they can preach a sermon like that. And it really actually moves people and people want to imitate. There is a place for a pastor even saying, imitate me as I imitate Christ. However, I kind of overcorrected away from that and need the team to be like, hey, remember to tell the people, the Lord has given us a great task and he's called us to great things. And the scriptures are calling us to walk in these good works. And if we will do them and the Lord is on our side, think of the idols that could be torn down and think of the ground that could be taken for the sake of the kingdom and think of the lives that could be freed from sin. Like that, I have a dream speech moment a little bit. So I have to challenge myself more to say, don't forget to do that.
Well, it's interesting because Friedman will talk about this, that today in leadership discussions in business, most people think, okay, if we want to, do better as a business or family institution, whatever it is, what we really need to do is we need to have better techniques. We need to get more data. Mm-hmm. And he would tell him, I think he's passed away, the older guy at this point, but he would say, you need to stand up before your people and give an I have a dream speech.
Yeah.
You need to fill them, they have to feel and great teams do, this Tribe 4 and Tribe 5, they sense about them that they're a part of something special.
Yeah.
God is doing an amazing work. It's an energy in the room. Mm-hmm. And we've all kind of, I think, experienced that here at a certain extent. When I tell this to the leadership team all the time, but it's you have to just be blown away by the quality of men and people that God has brought to us. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were seasons in ministry where I was like, if I could have one of these people, I would have been over the moon. And we have 10 of them. Mm-hmm. And the Lord in his kindness just saw fit to do that work. Mm-hmm. But that's what causes people to say, we're part of something great that the Lord is doing. Mm-hmm. We're not taking credit for ourselves, but just his kindness has brought that about. So yeah, I think you're right. Public speaking, highlighting some of those things as they're happening. Number 7, someone in the tribe has to focus on leading your leaders. Mm-hmm. So again, we've dealt with this, won't beat it to death, but simply that it's not just that you need pastors or even CEOs and stuff like that. Their main job isn't to spend one-on-one time with every employee in the company,
right?
Especially as it grows in size. But it's actually to impact the leaders. How are you doing in your department? How are you leading the thing you're leading?
Yeah.
And so coaching some of these things. And the seats on the bus, we spend a lot of time cultivating that as well.
Yeah, you need somebody that's their job. Even if they're not the one doing all of the leading of the leaders, they're the one who's making sure it happens. In our team, this is mainly your role. And that also can mean hey, Kevin Griffin, you should meet with this guy on the team and work on this thing that they're going through or help them grow in that. So it's just somebody the buck stops with them, that the leaders are being led, that the leaders are being impacted. It's also my job in a lot of ways too, on vision side of things for the church, to make sure that we're in terms of a tuning fork, that we're all singing the same tune. We know where we're going. So there's multiple layers to this, but it requires hierarchy on a team.
Yeah, so important. Number 8, master the 20-mile march. So this comes from Great by Choice, another Jim Collins book. But really talking about, there was a race, I think, for the South Pole between Roald Amundsen and Robert Falcon Scott. Scott, of course, didn't make it. That's too bad. And then Roald Amundsen did. And really what he did was he had this policy where he said, rain or shine, I'm going to do 20 miles a day. Mm-hmm. And the key here was holding yourself back when you feel like you could do 150 miles that day. Scott, on the other hand, what he did was when weather was bad, he'd stay in his tent for a week, mm-hmm. and then he'd crush himself in 2 days. Again, never made it. For businesses, for institutions, for churches, it's building a culture where we say, we are steadily, slowly, at a reasonable pace accomplishing the mission.
Yep.
One of the things I would say we talked about podcasts earlier, and we've had a lot of people come to the conference and they say, how could I replicate what you guys are doing? And I said, well, a lot of it is, you have intangibles of, people, talent, things like that. It's just the Lord's kind providence that have come to us. And, Ben cares about ghosts, and that took off, and, Sasquatch and whatever. And you too. That's great. Love it. Always been for it. It's my favorite.
Yeah.
But so there's some intangibles there. But I think actually one of the things that we do well is just principles of good business. You have standard operating procedures. You have the work that everybody does on a schedule, on a daily, weekly basis. We have an advertising department. We work with advertisers. We fill ad slots. I guess my point is, it's a lot of grinded out, not sexy work. And people think it's like, oh, you just wake up one day and you write a hit song and everything just takes off. And you're like, actually, it's just, you have to have systems, you have to do the work, and you have to do the work consistently over time. The time principle is really important.
The hardest part is execution over a long period of time. It is easy to start stuff. It's easy to get excited about something and start it. It is so hard to maintain a thing for years.
Yeah.
It's easy to be like, I've worked so hard. I can't wait to be the senior pastor of a church and I can preach every week. And then you get to the church and you're a year in and you're like, I would rather do anything than do this for the rest of my life. And some people run into that. You have to learn how to be like in Bright Hearth, we talk about this a lot from Misty Winkler. It's a principle we tell the ladies in homemaking, is learning to love what must be done. That's a good principle of leadership. And it goes with the 20-mile march. You're learning to love what must be done. You're saying to serve these people well, it's not going to be flashes of inspiration followed by sprints. It's going to be sober, mature, wise ordering of our affairs and careful execution with diligence over a long period of time. And it's going to have seasons where it's exciting, and there are going to be more seasons where it is tremendously boring and difficult, or just difficult and painful. And those are the seasons when the weather's bad and you do those 20 miles. That's when it really counts.
Yeah, and I think, in years past, one of the things that I would tell myself is, on a yearly basis as you're evaluating projects and what you're working on, start less, finish more.
Yes.
And so I think one of the keys to longevity with great businesses, which is what Jim Collins is talking about, but say something like Hard Men Podcast. I produced that show for the first few years every week for 2 years. And so that means every week you're just writing content, you're reading books, you're doing the hard legwork. And then we went to bi-weekly. And so, now I think, we're 2005. So we're in year 5 of that show. And now we've got Tate and Ethan Sen working on that.
Yeah.
But for a podcast to run for 5 years in our space, almost every week or then bi-weekly on a schedule is unheard of. And no one knows more than us how hard it can be to keep going. But what's cool is that then you get into depths of thought and it's like, now I love doing what we do. I love Bright Hearth. I love King's Hall. I love Haunted Cosmos. I think they're all important, and I think they're worthwhile, and they can actually really bear good fruit out in the people that listen to them and in our community. So, but all of those took getting over a hill at some point of the excitement's gone.
Whoa. Where's all that fizz that was fizzing about? Yeah, it's not there anymore.
Yeah, there's no immediate response. You get to a point with shows where it's you have a really solid audience, but it's it's not new. It's not growing like weeds anymore. And you just have to be able to do the work. So really those two things, keep making consistent progress on your bad days when you don't feel like it, do the work. And then secondly, stop and hold yourself back on your best days so that you don't burn out. When it's going really well and it's super exciting and you say, no, we did enough for today.
Yep.
And we'll be able to do this more long-term. Really important. Number 9, I think this one's really important. Cultivate a sense of playfulness.
Yeah.
Because it is serious work. It's important work, but you'll find with great teams that there's always a sense of joy and mirth and playfulness. Friedman talks about this as well. The people who seem to manage stress best are people who could, say, hypothetically capture a baby raccoon on a golf course and laugh about it and then make really cool reels. And we have a lot of cut up time.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of time that's spent laughing in the studio, watching the bloopers reel from Haunted Cosmos with Evanescence and Martina McBride. I mean,
I love how Ben and I get to just be Ben and I.
Yeah.
But then everyone else has to be literally female rock stars.
And they're men.
And they're all men. And they had no say in it. They came to work one day. They sat down to do their job. And all of a sudden they're like, the cameras are on, guys, go ahead. And we were like, now our producers, female rock star names, they're doing great work back there.
Doing great work.
And they're just like, I edit this, right? Like I can take this all out.
But yeah, I think golf, this is kind of a crossover actually. I don't know if it ever came out, but we were filming last year, or maybe it was this spring with Ben, and he was like, I want to do this thing so he's like, I'm going to hit a drive, but I'm going to do the George W. Bush. Now watch this drive. And it was great. He hit the drive squarely left into a tree. And we were just dying of laughter.
Because George W. Bush was like, we're going to find these Taliban terrorists. We're going to hunt them down wherever they are in the world, and we will bring the full might of the U.S. military to bear on their sorry existences. Now watch this drive.
But he crushed his drive.
300 yards down the fairway. But
I mean, Ben crushed one into a tree.
That tree is still feeling it.
Yeah.
Legend has it the tree died.
Impressive. So I think, being able to cultivate that, having workplace hangouts, obviously we do a lot of golf. We do just a lot of things together.
Yeah, we're just friends and
slip
we
and
joke
slide
a
on the
bunch.
mountain.
Oh man, we have a lot of good times.
I think, we said this with golf. Mm-hmm. The only reason we keep Ben around on a golf course is for the vibes.
The vibes.
I mean, the vibes are high.
He's a pure vibe player.
I mean, if I'm feeling tense on a tee box and I watch him almost kill or maim a small animal.
Yeah.
That is
30 yards to his right.
30 yards to his right.
Yeah.
Or the time when he hit the tree in front of him and the ball landed behind him. That was, it keeps you loose. You're having a good time.
It is an important part of the culture.
Humor.
You can't just be serious all the time. This is one of the things about the Puritans that drives me nuts, at least about the way that, I don't know if they're actually like this in practice, but there is such thing as like, but bro, could you just lighten up a little bit?
Well, what it was
occasionally?
It was like the famous quote from the journalist. It's like Malcolm Muggeridge. He said, Puritanism is that nagging suspicion that somewhere someone is enjoying themselves. Like, you don't want to be known for that.
You cannot have that on the team or it will die because people won't want to be there. And here's the neat thing. Like, if people don't want to be somewhere, it's not going to produce probably greatness over time.
No. So there's got to be a sense of playfulness. Number 10, and finally, as we wrap things up, building a pipeline for future leaders. Yeah. So we talk a little bit about the guilds. Again, just like Prince Henry with Lisbon, you're going to build something long-term that trains leaders. So what we've done is the Leadership Guilds, which we had looked at a couple different programs, including Greyfriars up in Moscow, and just looking at those programs and saying like, okay, we need a pipeline, we need to train, but we need to enculturate them in our culture as well.
Yeah.
So Pastor Sen and Pastor Garrett, myself, we kind of worked on the first iteration. Actually, Ethan and Ben were trained in it.
Yeah.
So we did the first one. It was kind of cool because I was like, okay, I'm going to train you guys in the guild. And here's the fun fact. Ethan, I want you to write the curriculum. So delegation, that's leadership.
He had an MDiv.
Yeah, he had an MDiv. So really, he built the course out from some existing models. So what we've done is kind of 3 separate tracks. First, we did an elder guild because we
needed elders.
We had guys who were ready to go through that process. Yeah. So you have a year of training in eldership while, coming to elder meetings and going through, counseling with us and, taking their hacks, doing new member interviews, that sort of thing. So that was the first one. Then we did Deacon Guild because we knew, okay, well, now we have the elders. We're going to use those guys now to train the deacons. So a little bit different curriculum in terms of what books they're reading and stuff like that. Once the deacons were trained, and I think we got, 3? 3 deacons out of that. Then we started a Churchman Guild. And the Churchman Guild was more for, okay, we just want to make men in the church who could one day, or maybe they're there, but like be qualified, maybe for future office, maybe not. Maybe they're not going to be deacons, but we just still need great churchmen.
Yeah.
And it allows for a couple things. The other leaders, the deacons and the elders, still participate. They get to do some teaching. So it's a hack for them, training and discipling other men. But I think even in like a year and a half, Ethan and Ben have done a great job with that. You've seen a ton of community built with those men. One of the things I would like to do on the Patreon side, we'll include some stuff for sample curriculum. Like, what are they actually going through?
Yeah.
Most people are generally surprised. Like, we're going to read Death of the West. And then we're going to read Needham's church history. And they're like, okay, but why Death of the West? Because it's part of our culture here that we are thinking and talking about. So when we started the guild, went to Dan, went to the other leaders and be like, what are like cornerstone books that have really influenced you? It might be Anti-Fragility. It might be Out of the Ashes by Anthony Esolen. But we want to bake those into the enculturation of future leaders.
Yeah. And that pipeline, it's so important that you start it. If you haven't already, that you start getting a handle on it, because it takes time. Most of those leaders took several years before they were in office, for example. In most cases, it's several years of work, a year of guild, a year of candidacy. Before that, training and discipleship, even coming into the guild, because for us, the front door is small for the guild. We turn guys away. There's an application process that's rigorous for it, because we really want it to be focused on guys that really could become deacons or elders, if that's the track for it. Widen it out a little bit more with the Churchman Guild. But the goal then for us is that the broad culture would be doing the heavy lifting of producing a general baseline of maturity, discipleship, a culture of peacemaking, dealing with sin, all these things. And then you go out and you say, who did God gift? Who were those 10s, 50s, 100s, thousands leaders? And then you invite them in to this process, have them apply, see the seriousness of it.
They're reading a couple books a month.
Yeah.
It's really helpful too, I think, the discipleship process. So they're meeting with Ben and Ethan once a month and going through, how are your finances? How's your marriage? Yeah. When's the last time you got in a quarrel? Obviously, are you free from pornography? Any temptations? Yeah. Going through all of those things, it is a form of testing those men to see what they're like over the long term.
Yeah.
But you also see tremendous growth.
Yep.
I will point out too, that was really helpful, is having an entry exam very similar to what we would do for an elder.
Yeah.
There are guys that we've done that interview process with and said, not right now.
And they've even said, never mind, not right now.
Yeah, time commitment, maybe some things that you need to get in order. But even that is helpful.
It's very helpful. It's like a progress report.
Yeah, for helping them figure out where they need to grow. And then by the time somebody is actually, Ben or Ethan comes to us and says, hey, I think this guy's ready for diaconal, or this guy's ready for eldership. We've already spent like a year or two with that guy.
Yeah.
So we know what we're getting into.
Yep.
And we've seen the fruit of, whatever area of responsibility he's been given.
Yeah.
So that's been really cool. Yeah. One other last thing I will say is on that point of catching leaders in their early 20s, if you think about it, if you can catch a guy in his 20s and give him hope and a vision and meaningful work, I think one young guy in the church, we said like, okay, you're not going to be an elder right now, but hey, we've got this project. You can put together the golf scramble, or we have another guy who's doing another project in the church. And you can say, be involved with the leadership, go through the guild process. We're going to give you some things to do. And like in that instance, you're like, this is great. Like you get to see like competent, wonderful young guys, young families, but you also give them time to cook and you give them time to build their family and learn how to do family worship. And then you get into the discipline of children. And seeing that as a process that in a couple years, you're going to have somebody who's spent a long time in the system.
Yep.
This was one of the things in the NFL Tom Brady was talking about was like, why is the play so terrible now? It's not nearly what it used to be at the NFL level. And he said, well, people spend a year in college now. Instead of in the old days, you spent 4 or 5 years in college in these incredibly tough, rigorous programs that were preparing you. We don't have that now because guys go for a year. They have one mediocre season. Now they're in the NFL. They don't have the skills.
Yeah.
And you just can't microwave it. So having a long-term process, I think that's more rigorous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is really helpful.
We'll talk more about that in Patreon stuff, and we'll do some in the after hours. Or if you want to support the show, you can jump on the link in the description, and we put out after hours, a bunch of other content there and resources like that. And that really helps us continue doing what we do here at New Christendom Press. All of these shows, one of the things that's sometimes hard to see is the number of hands that touch anything we do at New Christendom Press. People are like, how do you do this and this and this and this at the same time? I'm like, well, here's the thing. We have a team of people that all work together. We have great employees at New Christendom Press. If you like the work that we're doing and you'd like to support it, definitely jump on to patreon.com, and the link is in the description down below. We'll talk some more about that, but I think that's all we've got for this episode.
Yep.
Any last words?
Nope. I think it's been a great discussion. Definitely check out Patreon. You can also go to the Hardmen podcast. Mm-hmm. We've got Brutal American apparel, and if you need a Zinn tin or an Alps tin.
Dude, whatever you want to put in.
Whatever you put in your tin, check that out. And I think those guys are actually running a special. You can get a coffee cup if you sign up at the $10 level or above. Yeah. Brutal American. Come on.
Let's go.
All right. Well, We'll see you guys in the next episode. Really appreciate the conversation. Appreciate all your support.